The early morning sky over Avalon International shimmered with streaks of rose and gold as travelers moved like tides through the sprawling terminal. Between bustling families and suit-wearing business commuters, a woman strode with purpose, her navy blue uniform crisp, her captain's stripes glinting beneath the terminal lights. Captain Alina Brooks had been here countless times, but this morning felt different. The moment she entered through the security gate reserved for flight crews, a subtle shift in the atmosphere followed her. Some turned to glance, others offered tight smiles. Alina didn't need a mirror to know what they saw, a poised, black woman with the calm gravity of command and the rare distinction of being the first female flight captain at AirAsia Airways to log over 10,000 flight hours. She passed Gate 17 and reached the pilot's lounge, where her co-pilot for the day was already waiting. First Officer Jared Coyle stood near the coffee station, a tall man with close-cropped blonde hair and an expression that hovered between polite and skeptical. "You're Captain Brooks?" he asked, though the name tag on her blazer made the question unnecessary. "I am," Alina replied, offering her hand. Jared took it but with just enough hesitation to notice. "Didn't expect to be flying with, well, someone of your background." The pause didn't go unnoticed. Alina raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She'd heard worse, and frankly, she didn't have the energy to educate him today, not yet. "I assume you've reviewed the flight plan?" Jared cleared his throat and nodded. "Yeah, we're on Flight 228 to London via Reykjavik. Weather looks good. Should be smooth sailing." "Excellent. Let's keep it that way." Together, they moved toward the boarding area, where Alina's presence caused a mild stir among a few passengers. One woman whispered to her companion, pointing at Alina with the edge of her passport. "She's the captain?" the woman said, brows raised. "I've read about her," the companion whispered back. "She's supposed to be incredible." Alina overheard but didn't react. Praise and prejudice arrived on the same wind. She knew better than to be swayed by either. As boarding commenced, the crew moved efficiently through pre-flight checks. In the main cabin, Senior Attendant Lucille Lucy Zhang greeted passengers with practiced warmth. She'd flown with Alina before and felt a quiet pride whenever they shared a shift. There was something powerful in watching someone like Alina command the skies with such confidence, especially in a field where too many still questioned who belonged in the cockpit. Lucy passed through the rows, helping passengers settle, when she spotted a man near the emergency exit row muttering under his breath. He was older, early 60s maybe, with a hardened face and a faded military tattoo on his forearm. "Something wrong, sir?" Lucy asked. "Just surprised they let women fly the damn thing," he muttered. Lucy's tone didn't waver. "Captain Brooks is one of our most experienced pilots. You're in very safe hands." The man snorted but said no more. Back in the cockpit, Alina and Jared finalized their checklist. Everything was routine, until Jared leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "I have to admit," he said, "you don't look like most of the captains I've flown with." Alina didn't look up from her screen. "And yet, here I am. Let's focus on the job." Jared chuckled as if she'd told a joke. "No offense. I just think we all have to be realistic about experience. I mean, I've been flying longer than most people my age." Alina turned to him, her tone level. "And I've been flying longer than most people, period. Let me be clear, First Officer, this isn't your flight. It's ours. But command is mine. I hope that won't be a problem." Jared hesitated, then glanced away. "No problem," he said. Alina turned her attention back to the instruments, her eyes scanning the indicators. But a sliver of annoyance cut through her usual calm. This wasn't about ego, it was about performance. When pilots doubted each other, things went wrong. She wasn't about to let that happen, not on her flight, not with her crew. As the jet taxied onto the runway and gathered speed, Alina guided it skyward with the grace of someone born for the role. The clouds parted as they ascended, revealing a breathtaking view of the sunrise over the Atlantic. For the next 2 hours, things were smooth. The hum of the engines, the occasional ping of the intercom, the soft rustle of newspapers and safety cards in the passenger cabin, all of it routine. Then, somewhere over Nova Scotia, the first warning sign came. A soft flicker on the diagnostics panel. Barely a blink. But Alina noticed. "Did you see that?" she asked. Jared frowned. "Probably a sensor misfire. Happens sometimes." "Maybe," Alina said, fingers already moving across the screen. "But let's rerun the auxiliary system checks anyway." As they ran the diagnostics again, a soft rattle vibrated from somewhere beneath the console, too faint to pinpoint. Jared shook his head. "We're fine." Alina wasn't so sure. Her gut, The same instinct that had kept her safe through storms and emergency landings, told her something was off. Not dangerously off. But not right either. She reached for the intercom. "Lucy, this is Captain Brooks. Please send one of the attendants to check for any unusual sounds coming from the cargo deck." Quietly. "Copy that," came Lucy's calm voice. Jared turned to her. "You really think there's a problem?" "I don't think. I verify. That's what captains do." Down in the cabin, Lucy dispatched the junior attendant, a fresh recruit named Eric, to check the lower deck access panel near the aft galley. Moments later, Eric returned, pale-faced. "There's a strange humming. And something. Clicking. Not loud, but not normal either." Lucy's stomach dropped. "Stay with the passengers. I'll alert the captain." As she relayed the message, Alina's brow furrowed. She leaned forward, scanned her screen again, then stood up. "I'm going to inspect it myself," she told Jared. "Hold course. Keep the comms open. And if you see any shift in pressure, call me back immediately." As she stepped into the cabin, rows of passengers barely registered the captain moving among them. But Alina's eyes were sharp, sweeping over the aisle as she made her way to the aft galley. She placed her hand against the floor near the cargo access panel. And there it was. A faint thrum. And underneath it, something else. Tick. 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 The subtle ticking against the floor wasn't loud, but it pulsed with an unnatural rhythm that instantly set Captain Alina Brooks on edge. Kneeling beside the aft cargo panel, she placed her fingers gently against the laminate flooring. It wasn't just sound, it was vibration. Measured. Mechanical. Deliberate. She straightened slowly, her eyes locking with Lucy Zhang, who stood nearby watching passengers carefully. Lucy had flown with Alina enough times to read her without words. One glance was all it took. Lucy approached, keeping her voice low. "What do you think?" "I'm not sure yet. But something's definitely off." Alina's voice was tight with focus. "I need to get a closer look." Quietly. "No alarms unless I say otherwise." Lucy nodded and moved to block visibility from the passengers while Alina accessed the hidden maintenance panel. She lifted the latch, revealing the recessed cargo access tunnel. Cold air greeted her as she peered inside. The space was narrow, lit by a single flickering emergency strip along the ceiling. She reached for the flashlight clipped to her belt. "Watch the door. If anything changes, you signal me." Lucy gave a terse nod. "Be careful." Alina ducked inside. The crawl space beneath the passenger deck was tighter than she remembered. Most pilots didn't venture down here themselves, it was a space reserved for ground crews and technicians. But Alina wasn't most pilots. If there was a threat to her aircraft or her passengers, she would find it herself. The ticking grew louder as she moved deeper. Her flashlight beam cut across metallic crates, secured netting, and maintenance panels. Then she saw it, near the hydraulic lines. A small black box, no larger than a shoebox, bolted behind a false panel. Alina's breath caught. She edged closer, examining it without touching. Wires coiled from its side into the hydraulic system, partially concealed but clearly deliberate. The markings were generic, untraceable. No airline tag, no manufacturer stamp. Tampering. Sabotage. Her heart pounded, not from panic, but from the weight of confirmation. She activated her comm. "Flight deck, this is Captain Brooks. Respond." Jared's voice crackled back. "Go ahead. I've discovered unauthorized equipment connected to the starboard hydraulic system. Potential sabotage. Maintain current altitude. Begin securing flight path for emergency landing." There was a long pause. "Sabotage? Are you sure?" "I don't guess. I confirm. Initiate descent planning. Now." As she backed out of the crawl space, Alina caught one last glance at the device. Something about the way it was hidden, too sophisticated for an amateur. This wasn't the work of a disgruntled employee. This was professional. Back in the cockpit, Jared Coyle sat bolt upright, all traces of casual arrogance now replaced with icy focus. He opened the comm channel to AirS's emergency control desk. "Control, this is Flight 228. We've got a confirmed mechanical anomaly, potential tampering. Requesting priority clearance for emergency descent." "Copy that, 228, came the immediate response. "Diverting you to Edinburgh. Runway 28 cleared. Emergency cruise en route." Jared swallowed hard. His earlier skepticism about Alina now gnawed at him. She had seen what he'd dismissed. And now they were all relying on her decisions. Alina re-entered the cockpit, brushing dirt from her sleeves. "Edinburgh." "Confirmed," Jared replied. "ETA 40 minutes. Good. Let's keep it quiet in the cabin. No need to start a panic. Adjust autopilot for a gradual descent. We want soft angles, no sudden shifts. Understood, Captain? There it was, he said it without hesitation now. Captain. No doubt. No hesitation. Respect earned. Alina reached for the intercom. In the main cabin, passengers stirred as the intercom chimed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Brooks. We've received a weather update from our destination and are making a precautionary adjustment to our route. We'll be landing slightly ahead of schedule. Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened. Her voice was even, warm, and calm. The kind of voice that soothed anxious travelers and smothered panic before it could ignite. Sharon moved down the aisle, keeping a watchful eye on expressions. Most passengers seemed unfazed. But Thomas Caldwell, seated in 22A, was watching her closely. He raised a hand as she passed. This is about the humming, isn't it? Sharon didn't pretend. Captain's investigating. But everything's under control. Thomas nodded slowly. I've heard that tone before. In field briefings. That's your stay calm but be ready voice. Sharon cracked a faint smile. You're not wrong. Tell your captain, he added, if she needs eyes, I still know how to look. She patted his shoulder. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. As Flight 228 cruised lower through the stratosphere, the ticking grew louder again. In the cockpit, new readings began to flicker. Jared pointed at a fluctuating number. Pressure variance. Starboard system again. Alina narrowed her eyes. That device, it's triggering intermittent pulses. It's not just sabotaging hydraulics. It's testing response time. Recording behavior. You think someone's watching this in real time? I think we're a live test run for something bigger. Jared's face turned pale. Then we'd better make sure it's their last. Alina keyed the emergency protocol sequence. Preparing hydraulic override. Keep speed at 80% capacity and lock heading. We'll do manual gear deploy if needed. You're gonna do this old school? Jared asked, incredulous. She nodded. That's how I learned. That's how I'll land. At Edinburgh International, fire crews rolled into position. Security staff were dispatched to meet the aircraft. In the terminal, news quietly began to spread among airline execs and aviation authorities. Flight 228 was coming in hot. As the plane descended, the landscape of Scotland stretched below, rolling hills dotted with fog. Alina kept her voice low but firm. Gear deploy. Now. Jared flipped the switches. The cabin shuddered. In the rear, passengers looked around, sensing the difference. Thomas Caldwell gripped his seat, but his face remained calm. From her jump seat, Sharon watched the faces around her. We're going to be okay, she whispered. In the cockpit, Alina guided the aircraft over the runway, flaps extended, speed dropping fast. The landing gear made contact, first bump, second. A long screech of tires. Then silence. Safe. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause. Some passengers cried. Others just sat frozen. Alina leaned back, her hands trembling only slightly now. Jared turned to her, his voice thick with something unspoken. I've never seen a landing like that. She gave him a tired smile. You'll get used to it. Outside the cockpit, teams swarmed the plane. Authorities boarded. A technician entered the cockpit, his face pale. Captain. You need to see this. They led her to the maintenance crawl space. The black device had a faint green light blinking on its side. It was still transmitting. To who, and for what, remained to be uncovered. But one thing was clear. This flight wasn't just about sabotage. It was a warning. And Alina Brooks had just answered it. The sun had barely broken through the clouds when Captain Alina Brooks stood inside the debriefing room at Edinburgh International. The room was quiet except for the distant hum of air conditioning and the soft, rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. A printed schematic of the Boeing 787 was splayed across the conference table, its starboard wing highlighted in red. Beside it sat the black box that had been recovered from the crawl space, still powered, still blinking. Alina's arms were crossed tightly across her chest, but her stance was anything but closed. She was locked in focus, her eyes narrowed as if dissecting the air itself. Across from her sat Major Evander Quinn from the Civil Aviation Safety Bureau, a sharp-eyed man with a no-nonsense demeanor and a voice that carried the gravity of hard truths. So this device, he said, tapping the metal casing, it wasn't built for destruction. Not in the conventional sense. Alina raised an eyebrow. Then what was it built for? Disruption, Evander said, his tone clipped. Psychological warfare. It mimics critical system interference just enough to provoke a response. You handled it, but a less experienced crew might have panicked. Or made a catastrophic decision. Alina's jaw clenched. So they're testing us. Exactly, he said. Someone's collecting data, on flight responses, pilot protocols, maybe even passenger behavior. The unit has a built-in transmitter. It's been pinging an encrypted signal every 15 minutes since installation. Any idea where it's going? We're working on it, but it's bouncing through several anonymized servers. Whoever placed it knew what they were doing. The door opened, and Jared Coyle stepped in, his face pale from the emotional weight of the last few hours. He carried 2 cups of coffee and hesitated before sliding one toward Alina. She nodded silently and took a sip. Jared cleared his throat. I owe you an apology. Alina didn't look at him. For which part? The doubt, the condescension, or the hesitation when I needed you to act? All of it, he admitted. I thought I was prepared for anything up there. I wasn't. You were lucky this time, she said, voice even. Next time, it might cost lives. Jared lowered his head. You saved the flight. And probably more after it. I'll follow your lead from now on. No questions asked. Not no questions, Alina corrected, finally meeting his gaze. Ask questions. Challenge bad data. But don't ever let your bias override your instincts again. He nodded slowly, taking in her words like medicine, bitter but healing. Evander folded his hands. We cross-referenced this device with similar reports. 2 minor incidents in Asia, 1 in Frankfurt. All dismissed as mechanical quirks. But this confirms it's bigger. And if Flight 228 was a test, Alina said, that means the real hit is still coming. Down in the terminal lounge, Senior Attendant Lucy Zhang sat among the passengers, calmly distributing updates. News outlets had already caught wind of the diversion, but no one had mentioned the suspected sabotage yet. The official line was technical precaution. Still, rumors buzzed beneath the surface. Thomas Caldwell, the military veteran in seat 22A, approached Lucy with his usual steady gait. His eyes weren't curious, they were calculating. They found something, didn't they? He asked, voice low. Lucy hesitated. What makes you say that? You're trained to comfort, not to hover. But you've been checking every aisle, every door, every corner. That's not nerves, that's preparation. She exhaled. We're still gathering details. But you're not wrong. Thomas nodded slowly. Then your captain was right to act. And if this was a test, the next flight might not get so lucky. Back upstairs, the investigation widened. Arisa Airways corporate liaison, Carmen Voss, arrived on site in a crisp gray suit and heels too sharp for the situation. She slid into the debriefing room, her presence radiating corporate polish and controlled panic. We need to be cautious about messaging, she said, eyeing the black device like it might bite. The media's already sniffing. If this gets out. It's already out, Alina interrupted. The moment passengers started texting loved ones, the clock started ticking. You should be less worried about PR and more about the people still flying in systems vulnerable to this kind of breach. Carmen blinked, clearly unused to being challenged so directly. We just need time too. We don't have time, Evander snapped. Not if this is part of a larger operation. A beat of silence passed before Carmen sighed. What do you need from us? Access to all personnel logs for maintenance staff from the last 5 flights, Alina said immediately. Background checks, shift rotations, off-hours badge swipes, everything. Carmen looked at Evander, who nodded. Do it. The sun was dipping below the horizon when the first name pinged on the shared database, Gareth Moreau, a contracted maintenance worker with flagged activity during a previous investigation, but no charges. He'd serviced the same plane just 3 weeks ago. Evander raised an eyebrow. He never finished his last shift. Walked off-site. Security camera lost him in a long-term lot. No return scan. Pull flight logs, Alina ordered. Any routes that plane flew between then and now. If they tested it before ours, we need to know who was in the air. And who's in the air now, Jared added quietly. As night fell over Edinburgh, the airport's perimeter lit up with blue strobes from airport police and ground teams. The 787 remained grounded on a secured tarmac, surrounded by cones and engineers. Lucy sat beside Sharon Davis in the staff lounge, watching news scroll silently across the television screen. Emergency landing at Edie, crew praised for calm response. Think they'll say what really happened? Lucy asked. Sharon shook her head. Not yet. But it'll come out. Just then, her phone vibrated. A message from Alina. Lucy, I need a quiet list of all crew who accessed the flight deck or service compartments in the last 48 hours. Including subcontractors. No one gets missed. Sharon showed it to Lucy. Looks like it's far from over, she murmured. Back in the operations suite, Alina stood alone by the observation windows, watching the grounded aircraft under the floodlights. This wasn't just a glitch or a rogue employee. It was precision. It was a message. And she was one of the few who heard it loud and clear. They're poking the system, she whispered. And next time, they'll go deeper. But they wouldn't catch her off guard again. The rain came in sheets over Edinburgh's tarmac, washing streaks of oil and rubber into swirling puddles beneath the floodlights. From her vantage point in the operations center, Captain Alina Brooks watched through the wide window as technicians in waterproof gear circled the grounded aircraft. Their flashlights danced over every seam, latch, and bolt. Inside, the atmosphere was charged. Data analysts, aviation security agents, and two AirSN executives hovered around live feeds, chat logs, and digital schematics of the Boeing 787. The stakes had escalated. "We've mapped every flight this aircraft has taken since its last overhaul," said Evander Quinn, gesturing toward a series of blinking red dots on a digital map. 3 continents, 15 major cities. All low-risk flights. Until yours. "And what makes mine different?" Alina asked, arms crossed, mind already racing ahead. Evander tapped the screen. "Your flight had the highest-ranking personnel on board. You, a senior international operations exec, and 2 safety inspectors. We believe that was intentional." Jared Coyle, now working silently behind Alina, looked up. "So we were bait." "Worse," Evander said grimly. "You were a rehearsal." Alina stepped forward, her eyes scanning the map. "You think they're planning a coordinated disruption?" "We're past thinking," Evander replied. "We've traced Gareth Morrow's movements. He checked into a hotel near Heathrow last night. Surveillance lost him an hour later. But satellite images flagged suspicious heat signatures near an unregistered hangar outside London. We believe that's where they're staging the second phase." Alina's voice lowered. "Do we know their objective?" "To collapse confidence," Evander said. "They don't need to crash a plane. They just need enough near misses and grounded flights to force governments into overcorrection, create public panic, cripple air travel, trigger economic ripples." Alina's jaw tightened. "And they're using our own systems to do it." Behind her, Sharon Davis entered the room quietly, carrying a tablet. "Captain," she said, "we just got final crew access logs." Alina took the device, scrolling through the names. Her eyes narrowed on one. "Here. Max Ryland. Temporary maintenance tech from a third-party firm in Frankfurt." His badge swiped in twice. "No exit scan. Same gate as Morrow." "Think they're connected?" Jared asked. "I'd bet my wings on it," Alina replied. Evander turned to his team. "Flag Frankfurt. Get their security feeds. And alert ground control at Heathrow, we may be dealing with synchronized implants." Sharon lingered a moment, watching Alina. "What do you need from me?" Alina looked at her, unwavering. "Every passenger manifest for flights departing the UK tonight. Flag anyone who transferred from ours. Anyone seated near service panels or emergency doors." Sharon nodded and turned without hesitation. Jared leaned in. "You think they're planting more?" Alina exhaled. "I think we're already behind." An hour later, a breakthrough. A cargo drone bound for Montreal was pulled aside at Heathrow. Hidden beneath layers of boxed supplies, engineers found a device nearly identical to the one recovered from Alina's aircraft. Its transmitter was live, its wiring more intricate. "They're refining it," Evander muttered. "Getting bolder." Alina stared at the image of the drone on screen. "We've been playing defense. It's time to shift." Evander looked at her. "What do you have in mind?" She turned to Jared and Sharon, then to Evander. "Let's give them what they want, a test. But on our terms. We pick a decoy flight. We control the narrative. And we catch whoever comes to install the next unit." Evander's eyes lit with recognition. "A honeypot." Alina nodded. "Exactly." Evander looked around the room. "Then let's write the script." The storm outside howled louder now, but inside the command center, something steadier had taken hold. Resolve. The blueprint was no longer theirs alone. It belonged to those who understood the sky wasn't just a place to fly, it was a battlefield. And Alina Brooks was done playing defense. She was ready to fight back. The false calm of a rainy Edinburgh morning cloaked the truth beneath the clouds. A war was quietly unfolding in the skies. And at the center of it stood Captain Alina Brooks, no longer just a pilot but a sentinel, leading a team through one of the most dangerous aviation threats the industry had ever faced. At precisely 6:12 a.m., the final phase of her plan went live. Inside the operations center, a map displayed a single flight path, AirAsia Airways Flight 981, a fictitious non-commercial transfer route listed as testing calibration systems. The aircraft was parked at a decoy gate in Heathrow, loaded with a skeleton crew of trusted security officers posing as engineers. What the network didn't know was that every camera, every signal, and every badge scanner around that aircraft was now a trap. "Eyes on gate D12, said Evander Quinn, scanning a split-screen view of infrared and visual feeds. "All stations green." Sharon Davis stood behind the tech station, her normally warm expression replaced with something harder. She'd never worn a badge that read security detail before, but for this mission, she volunteered without hesitation. "This is it," she said softly to Alina. "Either they show, or they know we're onto them." Alina nodded once, arms crossed. Her nerves were tight but buried deep beneath decades of control. "They'll come," she said. "They've tested us. Now they'll want to deploy." Suddenly, a ping lit the lower right corner of the surveillance grid. "Unscheduled access badge swipe," announced a young analyst. "North Service entrance. Badge ID matches Max Ryland, he's back." Evander's team sprang into motion. Two others with him, the analyst added. Wearing AirAsia overalls. No tools, no ID scans, just shoulder entry override. Alina moved toward the monitor, leaning in. The grainy image showed three figures entering through the side bay beneath the plane's cargo hold. "They're heading straight for the panel," Evander confirmed. The next 30 seconds unfolded in silence. No one moved, no one breathed. Then, "Confirming breach," said the analyst. "They're opening the service latch. One of them is installing something, small, metallic casing, same shape as the last unit." Evander reached for his comm. "Tactical, move in. Secure without injury if possible." The screen erupted into motion as plainclothes airport security agents swarmed the cargo bay. Shouts echoed, hands were raised. One of the saboteurs attempted to flee, but slipped in the rain. The others surrendered. The screen cut to static as they were dragged from view. Evander lowered the comm and turned to Alina. "We got them." She didn't smile. "Not yet." Hours later, in an interrogation room, Max Ryland sat across from Alina, his damp overalls clinging to his thin frame. He looked tired, cornered, but unrepentant. "You don't understand," he sneered. "We're not trying to hurt people. We're trying to break a system that profits from silence and exploitation. When air travel becomes unstable, people pay attention. Governments react." Alina kept her voice cool. "You endangered hundreds of lives to make a point." "No one died," he shot back. "Because I didn't let them," she snapped, voice edged in steel. "You may think this is activism. But what you've done is terrorism." Ryland blinked, as if hearing the word for the first time. "We've traced your communications," she continued. "Found devices in 5 airports. All planted under civilian flights. You weren't trying to send a message, you were hoping someone failed. Hoping someone panicked." He sat back, lips thinning. "You can either help us stop the rest of them," she added, "or you can go down with them." Later that evening, Alina sat beside Sharon in the quiet of a hotel conference room. The mission was complete. The suspects were in custody. Authorities were moving on other cells across Europe. But victory didn't feel like celebration, it felt like breath after a long underwater swim. "You were right," Sharon said, breaking the silence. "They were watching. Listening. Waiting." Alina stared at her tea, still untouched. "They thought we wouldn't notice. That we'd flinch. Or worse, freeze." "You didn't," Sharon said. "You led." Alina looked out the window. A plane climbed into the sky, its tail lit by the setting sun. "I wasn't just flying a plane this time," she whispered. "I was flying every future flight. Every young woman who walks into a cockpit. Every person who's been told they don't belong at the controls." Sharon was quiet a moment, then asked, "What happens now?" Alina finally smiled. Small. Earnest. "Now? We rebuild trust. We reinforce systems. And we teach everyone how to listen to their instincts. Not to doubt them." In the following weeks, AirAsia Airways launched a sweeping overhaul of its security systems and protocols. Hidden diagnostics, employee rotations, and digital fingerprints were now monitored in real time. Maintenance vendors were recertified. Airport partnerships were rewritten. And at the heart of these reforms was Captain Alina Brooks. She appeared in press conferences, not for fame, but to force accountability. She wrote new flight training modules. She consulted with aviation boards worldwide. Her story spread not as a tale of fear, but of vigilance and resilience. And in schools, in aviation programs, in ground crew lounges and flight academies, people spoke her name with respect. Not because she saved a plane, but because she refused to back down. Because she grounded a network. Because she proved that even at 35,000 feet, clarity could rise above chaos. Final note. Captain Alina Brooks didn't just land her aircraft, she landed a message that would echo through aviation history. Leadership isn't just about flying through clear skies. It's about staying steady when the storm hits. Let me know if you'd like a thumbnail title, video voiceover script, or dramatic intro for this version. 2.